What is going on, guys? Today we are going to be prepping for the first startup, but before we do that, let's roll that intro. Before we jump into that, let's do a little question of the day. What ECU do you think that I went with? It's a standalone, that's the only hint I'm going to give you. Anyways, enough of that, we can finally jump into the video. Let's just show you what we're going to be doing. So here is all the stuff that we are going to be using, minus the spark plugs that I ordered that'll be here tomorrow. We've got a transfer pump for our gear oil that's going to be going in the trans, because if you saw that video, you'll know that we spilled so much gear oil on the ground, and we used the rest that we had, and it wasn't quite enough, so we've got to fill her up. And we've also got an oil filter for our RB. This filter is actually for a 1988 MR2. We have to use that because that's where our oil filter is going. That plate in there, our gritty oil filter relocation plate, uses this oil filter, which is a 1988 MR2. The thread is 3/4 by -16, so any filter that is that thread you can use, but they recommend the Corolla GTS, the 1988 one, and has a 4AGE, which is the same motor that's in MR2, so I just was like, alright, AutoZone, I need a MR2 oil filter, and this is what they gave me. Here we've also got vacuum lines. This is going to be for our ECU because it has a built-in map sensor, so that's going to go from the intake manifold to the ECU. And this is for our blow-off valve that we do not have yet. And then we've got just a bunch of clamps. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to get more clamps because I don't think the biggest size in here is big enough for our radiator hoses, but I think it covers all the other stuff, so we should be good there. We've got some coolant. I just got a gallon. I think that will be fine. If not, then I'll have to get more. And oil. I got some 5W30 synthetic Valvoline oil. It's not high mileage because this RB20 in the car only has 60,000 miles, so it hasn't quite reached high mileage yet, and this oil was actually pretty expensive, and I don't think I'm going to get it again. I think I'm going to get some cheaper oil next time because my plan is to have this in there for the first maybe 3,000 to 5,000 miles, and then change it out to some cheaper oil, and then every desert trip essentially I'm going to change the oil. So get another one of these filters and then get some cheaper oil. But I got 2 5 quarts because I believe we're going to be using maybe 7 or 8 quarts because we've got our motor, our oil lines to the oil filter, and our oil lines to the oil cooler and the oil cooler. And we also got a turbo. So a lot of things using oil in this car. So hopefully this is enough and we don't need any more. And yeah, that's pretty much everything apart from the spark plugs. Okay, so before we do anything, I want to get into the car and we're going to be tightening all of our AN fittings that are for our oil lines. I do have this AN adjustable wrench that goes from 3 to 16 AN, but this thing, I mean, it's good, it comes in handy if there's nothing in the way, because just the way it holds onto it is a little weird. So getting it on is tough. It's not like an actual wrench, and it just takes up a lot of room. So I'll have to use an actual wrench on some of the fittings because there's just not enough room to get this guy in there. So now that we have all of our oil lines good, all the fittings are tight, we can now put the oil filter on. So now we can put our clamps on things that need them, like our line for our air idle control valve. This guy, we need a clamp there. And a few things here and there. There's some stuff down there that need clamps. and unfortunately we can't do the radiator hoses. So here's our line for the air idle control valve that's up there. I need to get a port welded down here for this, and then that'll be done. So I'm gonna have to go to find a shop that can weld aluminum and have them do that for me. But anyways, let's just get the oil filter on and do the hose clamps, and then we'll move from there. Alright, so now we got our clamps on. I had to put a clamp on the air idle control valve, as you guys saw, but what you didn't see is there's a port down there where the heater hose goes, and I had to put a clamp on both sides of the heater hose because I just looped them together. But on this side, underneath the heater close, there's another clamp, or another port that goes off the heater hose, and I believe that went to the turbo or something, so we're not using that. So I had to put a cap on there and then a clamp on that to make sure that that is good. But I believe that is all the clamps. I even went and I tightened these guys, so we're good there. Still need those clamps for there. All the hose and fittings, apart from these fittings, are loose because I still have to do the spark plugs. So I just left those loose because I'm gonna have to take those off anyways. So not even worrying about that. Oh, also in case you didn't notice, I put the strut brace on. I sanded down the bottom and then repainted the bottom of it so it's nice and smooth so it doesn't mess up our engine bay paint. But yeah, it's on there, and I don't think it's ever coming off actually, because I can just loosen it here, take the bar out, and then it's out of the way. It's honestly such a mess down there with all the lines, and the whole harness isn't even in yet, and it's all gonna sit under the intake manifold. It's just such a mess on that side, and on this side it's actually super open and there's not a whole lot going on, which is good because this is the hot side. Our exhaust is there, our turbo's here. We don't want a whole lot of things going on here. I still have to get the heat shield for here that just goes like that, and it protects that from heat so your brakes work. Yeah, so I think we're all good there. So now we can put our gear oil in the trans, get her filled up. Alright, so now we've got our oil in the trans. The trans is good. I tightened up the fill plug. Now we're going to use this vacuum line and we're going to run it from the intake manifold into the car to where the ECU is going to go, because our ECU needs to see vacuum because it's got a built-in map sensor. This information alone should tell you which ECU that I'm going with. So in order to do that, we take our vacuum line here and we go to our intake manifold, and underneath the intake manifold you can see those two ports right there. There's one right by the throttle brackets, and then there's one right behind it. We're going to use the one that's right behind it, and we are going to put our line there and then run it into the cabin. Now we've got our line on it, and then we're just going to take this and feed it into the cabin from a hole down in there where our starter and alternator wires are going, since we already have that space and we do not have enough room to run it with the engine harness. And there we go, we got our vacuum line in the cabin now. I'll just feed it in with that grommet up there, and then we can put the grommet in, and then we should be good. I don't think there's anything else on this side that needs to come into the engine bay. Oh, okay. Oh man, guys, you should have seen how I got that pushed in all the way. I was literally like, my head was down there, my legs were up there. I was just real in there. Just you know, you gotta have dedication to get something like that done. Oh my god, that was not cool, but we did get it on, so that's great. Now the only thing left to do, I don't want to put any of the coolant in, not yet, because we don't need to. I want to put oil in, and I want to crank it with the starter and let the oil, some of it, go around, and I'm also going to be putting a little bit of oil in the turbo just to prime the turbo, because we do have a journal bearing turbo over here. So I'm going to take that feed line off, put a little bit of oil in there, spin it, and put a little more oil, spin it, and then it should go into the pan, and then we'll put some oil in here. We'll probably end up putting one of the 5-quart bottles in here, and I'm going to use the other 5 quarts when we do the first startup, and then we let it get to temperature, because our oil cooler is over here, and in our oil filter relocation plate thing, whatever it's called, this guy right there where our oil filter is, the lines on top, those are for the oil cooler, and they're on a thermostat, so it won't open until it reaches a certain temperature, and then when it gets below that temperature it closes. So we won't even be able to get oil to go into our oil cooler until we get the motor to a certain temperature. So what we'll do is we'll use the starter to crank it. We'll do slow cranks, you know, just a little, like 2 seconds, let it spin for a little bit, for 2 seconds, stop, another 2 seconds, stop, and then make sure we don't hear any weird noises, and then we'll probably go for a good like 5 to 8 second hold, and then be good. Do that a couple times, and then obviously let the starter cool down. We don't want to burn the starter out, but just so we can get it to move. And I know it's not seized because I was there when they did the compression test, so I know that the motor spins, and I redid the timing, or I changed the timing belt. I didn't redo the timing. The timing is the same as it was stock, so I had to spin it by hand and it spun fine. There's no issues or anything, so I'm not worried about that. But let's just get a little oil in going, and we got to make sure we get oil in the turbo. That's a big, very important thing. So yeah guys, that's the plan. Let's just get to it. So while putting oil in, I totally forgot that I didn't tighten up the return flange, so I made a little bit of a mess. It's just little drips, but we got her tightened up. Totally forgot that I didn't tighten that. I know I tightened the fitting, but yeah, so now we can finish what we were doing, but everything looks good. I mean, it's spinning real nicely now that it's got oil. So we're good there, and I'll pour the rest into there, and then we'll give her some cranks with the starter and see how she sounds. Not like, you know, with the exhaust and everything, just make sure everything sounds pretty good. Sweet, so as you just saw, she cranked, everything was good. It sounded weird only because, and I totally forgot about this, it honestly scared the shit out of me because it sounded so weird. I took the spark plugs out, so there's not going to be any compression. So that's why I was just, it wasn't like, it was just a, because there's no compression, because the spark plugs are out, so there can't be any compression, so we're good there. It scared the shit out of me. It moved real nicely. There was no weird noises, everything was good, our turbo's good. We actually need to tighten the turbo down. I haven't tightened the bolts for it, it's just been sitting there. And I mean, guys, like, we're pretty much ready to start. So I went and tightened the turbo, so now she's not going anywhere. Literally moving the whole car with just the turbo, so we're good there. So, I mean, that's essentially it. All we have to do now is we have to wait for the ECU, because there was a little issue with the ECU that I don't really want to get into right now. I'll get into in the ECU video, but I've got a whole little rant to go off of how USPS is just a shit postal service. But anyways guys, I'm going to end the video here. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like if you did. Comment down below your answer to the question of the day, and then hit that subscribe button. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.